Welcome to season 4 of Just Being Honest with Mills Lane. I am Mills Lane. Yes, I know it is the last day and almost the end of the year, and we haven't had a show, but we are kicking off season 4 with some hot topics. And I bet you're wondering, yeah, it's been a few months since I've been on here, and although I've lined up some great guests, there was something that kind of moved me that made this show actually happen. So I've been stuck in a holding pattern, and life has been lifing, and exhaustion with my new puppy, my 9 to 5, all of these things. And did I say life has been lifing? But what finally brought me back on this particular topic was after news broke on October 7th, when Hamas executed, a deadly attack on Israel in Israel, in which obviously at this point has turned into war. So I remember seeing all of the news. I remember seeing a lot of images of death. And you all know, what I do for a living. And, my students were being affected. And I needed to kind of go down the rabbit hole to educate myself, because I still have a lot of ignorance, but I'm getting a clearer picture because I decided to do my own research, and I decided to talk to people who shared stories with me. And I just I feel enlightened in some parts, but it's just such a heavy topic to talk about. But I've never spoken to or heard a lot from people of Arab descent, Palestinians, Muslims. I really never heard their side. And tonight I kind of want to get that, I want to get that story out, and I want you all to do your own research. And hopefully from this show, I'm going to give you some people to research and get out there and actually learn what's happening in the world. Again, I've seen anger and fear on the faces of my students, but I really wanted to just start with a Google search and kind of go down that road of what's the history of Israel, what's the history of Palestine. And I don't have all the answers. I won't have all the answers tonight, but I do feel like I'll be better, and we'll be better if you want to go down this road to understand what's happening in the world. So my first guest, her name is Iman, and we had a random conversation after this started, and I just asked how she was doing, and she generally appreciated that I asked how she was doing. And I was like, I couldn't believe nobody else really had asked her that before. So I'm going to introduce you to her, and she's going to share some of her truths with us and talk about all of the things and things that kind of upset her, and how she keeps her head up every day, knowing that she's got family members and friends that are still embroiled in this, even though she is a Palestinian American woman. So I'm going to invite her into the space. Her name is Iman. Stand by. Hi, Iman, you're muted.
The typical. You thought we would get over that after COVID, right? Sorry. Hi.
Hi, welcome to the show. Thank you so
Hi.
much for taking time.
Oh,
It's going to be a quick
absolutely.
hour, and I promise that it won't be all bad news, sad news, and all of that. I do want to make us laugh, and that's going to happen. But I just appreciate you for taking the time to help enlighten me. And we've had conversations like I shared in the open that I just wanted to see how you were doing. So let's start there. How are you doing?
Uh, I'm a little tired, but I
Mm-hmm.
think that's just like the regular life. Life is lifing has been my.
Like,
When you said it, I was like, yes, life is lifing. Just typical exhaust. I think there is, with what you started saying, there is like this kind of cloud over a lot of people right now, because there's such hesitancy to speak on certain topics and certain
mm-hmm.
things, and how do you even begin to bring it up, right? So like
Right.
even going with back to like, you asked me how I was doing, and I think it clicked in my head. I was like, I've never been asked that by
Mhm.
like a non-Arab. But I also
Mhm.
think even with them, it's like, your family is good? No. And I've had like, former people that I've known that are just be like, oh, is your family good? Yeah, okay, cool. Um, but I also have the privilege of being in the United States. So it varies for me. But to me, it became like I've never been that person to just be like, who hasn't checked up on me? But after this, I was kind of like, yo, we're in a like,
Right.
wait a minute, right? It
Right.
kind of, and I've never been that person. I had it like, a conversation with one of my best friends about it. She's like, you've never been that person. You're the person that's like, when something is bad, I'm gonna avoid it until I'm ready to deal with it.
Mhm.
Please don't bring it up.
Yeah.
But I think in this situation, it hit further because of the images that were coming out that were just like, wait a minute, this is
Mm.
what my grandparents spoke about. This is what my parents spoke about. We're seeing it
Mhm.
live now.
Right.
And it hits different. It hits different when it's like, oh my gosh, you guys really toned it down for us growing up.
Right.
You toned it down. And again, like you said,
In what ways though? And knowing what we've seen in the last few weeks, again, you've seen this more than me and been more tuned into it because this is where you're from. But how toned down were the conversations?
oh gosh, with my parents, I think when we were younger, it would be like, so my family was exiled in 1948. We are originally from we like to call like the outskirts of Jerusalem. So kind of like, DC, and then the outskirts would be like Arlington or Virginia. But I guess America
Okay.
is different in that sense, right? So like Palestine and Palestinians are very tribal in city. So like our family names is the name of the town that we're originally from. Right. And we can come back to that, like when we're talking about the way words are being used, like, way languages. Cause like when I hear
Mhm.
the new cities, I'm like, it takes me a minute to kind of code switch. Like, what city are you talking about? Tel Aviv?
Right.
Like, that's not that. Like, and it wasn't until I got older where it's like somebody could be talking about a whole city in reference to like an Israeli named city,
Mhm.
and in my head, I'm like, I have never heard of that. Which family is from there? And it
Yeah.
wasn't until I got older that I realized, like, wait a minute, this is a different name for the same place.
Mhm.
Like, so for
Well,
me, sometimes it
let's go
takes a
there
minute
though.
to
So
switch.
make us understand that. What do you mean the cities are different or not the correct names?
So if you want to go into the historical context, right, there is this whole battle of like, well, Palestine was never a sovereignty on its own. It was just a group, but it's like realistically, it went from Romans to whoever else, and then it was the Ottoman Empire. Like we're talking about, like you want to go very deep into history, but it was always called Palestine. Like you look in
Mhm.
history books, it was called Palestine. So the
Right.
denial of the name of a country, to me, like once you deny the existence of a land, I'm like, I can't speak. And it is very,
Mhm.
one of those like you are refusing to even go there. You can say, hey, it used to be named this and now it's named this. All right, now we can get a conversation flowing.
Right.
But
Right.
to deny the existence of an entire group, to say there was nobody living there, it was empty space, it was the land with no people. It's kind of just like you're telling me that Jerusalem, the holy city, the center of the world, right? Like even if you're talking about the axis, right? The Y and the X, the west
Mhm.
and the east used to be off of Jerusalem until we shifted it a little bit a couple of years, like, a couple of years into it. But when
Mhm.
you're talking about the east and west in reference, people were always referring to Jerusalem as the center of it. So when I'm talking about the deletion of the names, right? So like, let's see, Tel Aviv isn't Tel Aviv, for like it's Jaffa. Even I could probably get
Mm.
that wrong. Like I'm telling you, like Haifa, those cities stayed. Some of them stayed the same,
Mhm.
but other cities, like the names changed. Like my family's town is Beit Mahsir.
Mm.
It is now called Bear Masir, and like a whole different group lives there. But this is where my mom was the first generation in, I want to say almost at least 10 generations not born in that city. My mom was born in
Okay.
Jericho,
Wow.
right? My grandparents were born there, great grandparents, great great grandparents, great grandparents, great. And it's like the biggest joke when like one of my brothers went and took a DNA test, like, the genetics 23 and me.
Right.
And we
Right.
just looked at him like, you serious? You already know. Like, and my brother's test straight up showed like 90 something percent was from that region. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
what? Do you
So
understand me? Like, so for us, it's like, run me a DNA test before you want to talk to me about, like, now it's become like a joke, like an online joke. Run me a DNA test.
yeah.
Um,
Well, I think, in this starting of this new season 4 and um I did a gaffe because I think my whole intro wasn't recorded. So I want
Oh,
to it's okay, but I'll I want people that are watching to know that I wanted to do this show because um I wanted to kind of educate myself, and
mm-hmm.
because of, my students, and seeing the fear on some of the faces, and the quiet stares from my Muslim students, the vocalization of students that aren't connected in any way but have an opinion, and then the quiet looks of my Jewish students, and I'm like, something, it's deeper than that, so I need to educate myself. And in having our great conversations with you, um I wanted to get you on the show because I don't hear the plight of Muslims a lot, right? We don't get shown in a lot of our media. I think they're doing a better job now, but again, we don't we hear a lot of, anti-Semitic, this is against the Jewish people, and I just want to know, war is horrible, right? All the way around. The
Mm-hmm.
images that came out after October 7th were horrible, and sickening. But now that I'm starting to go down this rabbit hole, and in my show, I want to teach people and I want to encourage them to do their own research to kind of enlighten themselves. I understand a little bit better. And it starts with the history of the land. And I share with you, and I'm about to really, people might laugh when they find this out, but my first Google was history of Israel. And I had no idea that Israel was made a state in 1948. Right. I was like, wait, what? So right there for me, right? Like, you laughing, it's fine, but I legit did not know. So that right there answered a lot of questions for me because of this conflict with Palestine over land. And it bothers me that I don't see this as a um religious thing at all, right? And I think that's what the media, or people, that commentators would have you believe if you don't do your own research. So hearing about the history of the towns and how things have changed, and it's unfortunate, but it is also fascinating to me. And like I shared in the intro, our conversation started over how you doing, because I wanted to know, and I didn't know that not too many people come out and just ask you that. But go ahead.
No, that you're absolutely right in that. It's always a tiptoe situation with it because of what is being perceived as what the war is about. And like, for me, I am very cognizant these days. I'm a rambler. I can go off and go off and be like, wait a minute, let me backtrack a little bit. But I am becoming a little bit more aware and cognizant of the words that are being used. Um, so I refuse to say conflict because it isn't a conflict. It's not
Mm,
a argument or a disagreement on something vital, on something, sorry, something small, right? Like, this is a war.
yeah.
Um, you are right. It is about territory. It is not religious war. It is in no way a religious war. Um, Religions, the monotheistic religions, have lived there for centuries,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, Jesus was born there, if we want to go down to it, right?
Yeah.
Moses, Moses went there after there is a whole, and I want to say biblical just because I think growing up in America, it's so much easier for me to like reference the Bible for some
Right.
reason, even though I
Right.
wasn't raised in a church. All the biblical figures where they somehow have a connection to that land. And that is why it is so, I think people assume automatically it is religion. And when you talk about the complication, like, why is it complicated?
Mm-hmm.
It really isn't. I think we have just been told for so long. And I remember growing up thinking, like, am I smarter than everybody else that I
Mm-hmm.
understand this isn't complicated? But then it's also like, is this a bias? Like, have I
And you know
broken it
what
down
that
too
does to
simply?
people like me that don't know the history. It just, when you say conflict, I'm like, oh well, it's hard. I don't know if I want to go down this hole. I can't do it. I can't do it. And I think a lot of people, that's a cop out. But again, we all have choices. It just, for me, I love to learn, and just
Hmm.
as I want people to respect and understand the plight of Black people, You know what I'm saying? I hope that people do the same thing, for other cultures and other races, and that's kind of why I want to do this.
And you're right. So like this has opened, it's so interesting that when you say the conflicts of other people, because I feel like I grew up in a house where my parents were constantly watching world news, right? Like we're growing up in New York City, we're watching the news for not the American aspect, because we get that from, we used to have channel WB and I don't even know if
Hmm.
NBC, whatever, but my parents would watch BBC, Al Jazeera, like they're watching because they
Wow.
want to know what's happening in the world. And I grew up with like this understanding that these situations are all tied together, because now even I'm looking at social media and I'm like, you guys are now talking about what's happening in Sudan and in the Congo and in China.
Mm.
Like to me, it's like this is kind of broadening up the world to like how many things have we not been seeing, because it's
Right.
all been hushed with language, with the
Hmm.
vocabulary being used. Because
Yep.
for me, and to me, I'm not trying to say one war is more important than another war. I will never say that. The death
Hmm.
across any country, in any society, across anything is horrible.
It's horrible.
But this for us has always been like, for me, my family and Palestinians and even Arabs, like this is a plight, like this is a thing for us.
Yeah.
um, the religious aspects of it are there. I will never deny, like, we have our third holiest site as Muslims is there, right? It's the Dome of the Rock. No, I'm
Hmm.
sorry, the Al Aqsa. Al Aqsa is the third holiest site, right? There's two
Okay.
big mosques there. Um, we do have that, but that's not what this is about. This is about you saying you don't belong here anymore. We want this land now. You gotta go.
You
Okay,
gotta go.
cool. You have to go. And then the response becomes, so where do you want us to go? Oh, pick one of these Arab countries. How does that make sense? Because
Hmm.
even as of today, they're still saying it, like, oh, let Jordan, let Egypt, let Lebanon. There was like the other day there was an article that they were like, oh, we're gonna start discussing that countries that get funding will not be getting funding anymore unless they take them in, because we don't have the right to return, right? So like my
Mm.
family, 1948, they went from Jerusalem to Ramallah to the West Bank, right? 1967 was the second like big war. Let's the
So
Nakba.
when you
The
say the
Nakba.
right to, you don't have the right to return. They cannot go back to their homeland.
No, I go in with my American citizenship. I have a good old American passport and I am allowed to enter. But
Hmm.
even with that, I don't enter easily. I can't enter from Tel Aviv. Even though recently, this summer, there was a law passed because of the exchange. Citizens are allowed to enter. You know how like the visa stuff is? Some countries we have to get a visa for, some we
Hmm.
don't have to. They just approved it so that we don't have to get one, but we still get harassed. Like I got stopped at the border for 9 hours.
What?
Just sit there,
So
wait it
what are
out.
you
I'm over
even
there
sitting
like,
there
yo,
doing? But
USA, I fund this. Wait a minute. My
yeah,
fund this.
like like you
Pay
come
your
with a little,
bill.
bit of privilege, right? Right, and
Yeah,
that privilege is education, is knowledge, and so what is that like? You're sitting
it's,
where?
so I go in through the Jordanian borders, right? So like my family, so to backtrack, my family went 48 Jerusalem, 67, they were in the West Bank, and we were thankful,
You
like
talk about 1948.
1948 was the first catastrophe. The second one was 1967, the Al Nakba, right? So they have like titles for them. 1967, they left because they had heard about the massacres that had happened in the neighboring towns. So the Mar family was very much like, this isn't going to happen to our wives, the raping, the killing of the children. We're just going to take them, go to Jordan for a little bit, and then we'll come back once it settles, right? Because that's always it. We'll leave. And we had that privilege. Again, we had that privilege because my family was a little bit better off.
Hmm.
Again, we weren't of the richest. Don't, we weren't one of those like money everywhere, but we had, they had family in Jordan. They were like, okay, come over to Jordan, settle here for a little bit until the war settles down, and then you can go back, right?
Hmm.
Um, and this is the thing and this is when I was talking about my family like toned it down. They're just like, oh yeah, we went there. I'm like, okay, cool. Like I'm not thinking about it as a kid. And then I
Right.
get older, I'm like 16, 17, 18, and then we start seeing like, what do you mean you guys walked it to Jordan?
Mm.
Like you're walking miles on miles on miles. Like you're not like this is if this is to be driven, it's gonna be like a 3, 4 hour drive. How did y'all walk this?
Wow.
And my mom, so for us, it hits hard when I see the images now of people leaving Gaza because my mom's dad actually died on the way.
Mm,
So my grandpa died on the way from, so my dad's family left. They got to Jordan safely. My mom's family, her father died on the way to Jordan.
wow.
And like one of my uncles, his first memory is sitting with his father's body, waiting for him
Body.
to come carry him into Jordan. So
Yeah.
like for us, when we're seeing these images live right now, like we are the like these are our parents. Like, so a lot of us get very emotional.
Hmm.
We get the guilt, we get the survivor's guilt, right? Because if my parents had went the other way, we would be in Gaza right now.
Yeah.
And we have like some family that went there, very few, and then like we stay away. Like we don't have much interaction with them because there's like they're pretty much in a prison, like fenced in, controlled who goes in and out. And so Gaza's a completely different story.
And that's the thing. That's another part of this, and it's so much in this hour. But we're not gonna break it all down. But I do want, these little nuggets that keep coming out. Yeah.
Hmm.
So let's talk about that. How do people don't move freely in Gaza?
They
Palestinians can't move freely.
so you are not allowed to enter. So there's two ways to it, right? You have the control of the water and the electricity is by the Israeli government, which is why they were able to shut off electricity and in and out for those few days.
Wow.
The control of water, right? And then there's also these laws that get into play that we're now, even now, like as a person who grew up in a Palestinian household with all of this around, like, and I'm going to go off topic a little bit. Like, I am very privileged in the sense that my father was very much education first. You
Yeah.
need to read, you need to read, you need to read. Like, my dad gave me Malcolm X, the autobiography, when I was 12. Who gives that to a 12-year-old?
Wow.
Like, what?
Wow. Look here. This is what I need you to work with.
But my dad wanted to because at that time, he was very much like, you are Muslim in New York. You are coming in a world that we don't understand. I want you to be able to at least connect to a Muslim American, right? So,
Yeah.
like when people talk about Muslims, you're at least able to reference one Muslim American. Now,
Mm.
did my dad understand that Malcolm X at certain points in history was seen negatively?
Right.
Not
No.
at all.
No.
To him, it was like, oh, he is a great example for you to follow. People look up to him. I want you to know who he is. Here you
Mhm.
go. And I had that privilege, right? Like my dad
Mhm.
would buy these random books that like and be like, read them. When you're young, you're just like, oh my God, I know
Another,
this.
yeah.
Leave me alone. Like who wants to?
Wow. But the autobiography of Malcolm X at 12.
I mean, my
Wow.
dad was very much, I will say, that was the privilege, right? My mom, both my parents were very much, um, you need to know how to think, or people will tell you how and what to think.
Yep.
So
That's a
they
word.
really wanted, of course, as I got older, it was like, oh, you're so opinionated.
Mhm.
It worked against them eventually, right? But like, growing up, they were very much like, we want you to be able to have a stance. We want you not to be. And then again, when I was 13, September 11th happened. Like I was in eighth grade when September 11th happened, New York City.
Wow.
I'm from Queens. Again, I don't know any of this. I don't look, I think, in certain areas where there's a majority of Arabs, people are like, oh, she's Arab, right? I don't look it, right? I don't sound it, right? People
You
have
don't
had,
sound it, but I've had enough. I've had enough, interaction with people. I see your features. So
right.
yeah, I
Yeah.
see.
So like, and that's the thing. So like I didn't get the heavy weight of September 11th. I'm not gonna lie to you. Like
Mm,
curly hair, New York City. Most of my friends were Black, Hispanic, Dominican, Puerto Rican. Like I blend right in. They couldn't tell
mhm.
who was who. They didn't know
Yeah.
if my name was Vanessa, Iman, Ashley,
Yeah.
Aisha. Like we were just all mixed in there, right? Um, and I think with that, I didn't see it. But my mom was a hijabi in New York City, right? Like the first time I
Mhm.
cursed in front of my mom, first time in front of my mom, like, we were walking and somebody said something to her, and I just went off on a rant. And my mother looked at me, she was like, how dare you disrespect me like that?
Ooh.
And I looked at her like, girl, I'm defending you. Like, ma. And I remember she just looked at me like, don't you ever curse in my presence again. Like
Mm,
that. Like you can throw a little bit,
yeah.
a couple of here, there, but like, don't you ever curse like that in front of me.
Mhm.
Right. Um, but I was like, Ma, like he was cursing you out. She was like, you don't behave like that
Wow.
because your behavior is going to be what's talked about, not his.
Wow.
Right. And I think that's when I started noticing, like, okay, I have to tame my anger, right? I have to
Mm,
tame the upset. I can't walk around showing the rage, the
mhm.
upset of a situation because I get the double standard.
Yeah.
And I think this is where a lot of the situation, again, I will never say that there is a parallel to the prejudice towards Black people in America, right? But
Mhm,
in that sense, I can semi understand it. Again, I'm
mhm.
not saying it is the same because
Right.
I can blend in. And I've always said this, right? I don't
Mhm,
have to walk around saying I'm Palestinian. I
mhm.
choose to because that's what I am.
Right.
But I always thought about like the people that can't hide what people hate about them. Like
Mhm.
you can't walk away from that.
Yeah. It's crazy
And
that
I
you
remember,
say that because, I think about, the plight of Palestinians, the plight of Jewish people, the
mm-hmm,
plight of Black people. We've all dealt with the same things. So, I hate the cliche of, why can't we all just get along? Why, we are all human. We were all dealing with, we dealt with genocide. We dealt, I'm saying, in different eras and different types of ways, but we know
mm-hmm,
it's a very similar familiar story. So to have one group, and we'll move into, talking about occupation and the occupation of Muslims in Palestine, um and what's been happening for so long, and what happens to Black people, and and what spurred this social justice movement 3 or 4 years ago. It's a wonder. It's hate.
mm-hmm.
It's hate, and that's a sad thing, because all of us have similar stories and could, and some of us do. I don't have a problem with, my Jewish friends and growing up with Jewish friends or Muslim friends. I don't have as many Muslim friends, I think growing up, or that I knew of. Um, but it's just it always blows my mind that, we have a very similar story. We should all be unified and not against each other. Just my opinion.
1,000%, right? Like there is and that is one thing that is being noticed right now, right? So like if you want to talk about sources to follow and unbiased, let's say, opinions, and I always say this, I was like, listen, I don't like, I will discuss my opinion on this or my understanding, what I know is research, what I believe is facts, right? Um, but I will always say, look at the other side, right? So that's why when some people tell me I didn't know this, and I love that you told me I didn't know that it was created in 1948,
Mm-hmm.
because to me, I always like knowing what people don't know to see like what like how can I inform them of that
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
without making them feel like it's your fault.
Right,
Even
right.
though there is the big part right now that it's like saying you know nothing about this right now is you pretty much avoiding. But then some people are just like, listen, I don't do world events.
Yeah.
I'm very much into reality TV shows and reading my books, reading my rom.
And
I live in my
we have
world,
to
and I
respect
get
that,
that.
but
Yes, and I
to
get
me
it.
it just doesn't make sense, because I'm like, how do you not have a worldview? But some
I
people don't
understand it.
want to traumatize themselves, and I get that too.
Yes. I've had this conversation with a couple of like cousins and stuff where it's like we're envious. Some of us are a little envious. Like, how can you live without this weight on you? Because we all
Mhm.
grew up with that weight. We all grew up with having to know about other people's issues because it was
Mhm.
like, how does their issue impact us? How does our impact, how does our issue impact you?
Mhm.
And how is there the relation between there? And even like when you were saying about like the religious friends, right? Even for us, like the Arab Christians are even a smaller minority that nobody speaks about. Like I had a friend that was
I
like,
mean, that was
she
another
was like,
thing for me. It was
"There's
another
Arab Christians." I was
that.
like, I remember just looking like, what? And they're like, Arabs can be Christian. I'm like, you realize religion and Like, and
Yeah,
I had
right.
to just be like, okay, I can't make somebody feel stupid, but like, I had to take a step back. But it's also, to me, it's like we have been erased from anything, let's say positive, right? Because when you think of Christian, you have an image in your mind, right?
Mhm.
You don't want to attach an Arab to that. And I think
Wow.
that's where it is the dehumanizing of this group. And it's
Mhm.
happened, like you said, to Jewish people. It has happened to Black people. It has happened to the indigenous of these lands, right? It
Of
has
these
happened,
lands, let's give that parallel, you know?
right? It has happened to the Japanese. It has happened. And I will even say, like, even within Europeans, or like, so even I remember 2 years ago, and this was my own, trying to kind of like understand the world and maybe a little bit of like, do you guys just hate us? Like, is our otherness that much of a problem? Because I remember when, speaking of like conflicts and war, I remember when the Ukraine and Russia came out.
Mhm.
I looked around, like, everybody had a Ukrainian flag on, like,
I was
ready
in New York City. I was in New York City, and when I say
again,
they
support.
shut it down with those flags, and for every corner was, and
I was just like the stickers in classrooms, in schools, on buses, in bus stops. I was just like, where did you guys all get this in a day? Like, as a
mhm.
Palestinian, it takes me 3 to 5 business days to get a flag mailed to me. Like, what?
I mean, yes,
And
in
I
mass.
remembered like having to check my own feelings of like, I cannot be upset that another group is getting supported.
Mhm.
But for me, it was like, this situation is even more complex than the Palestinian Israeli situation.
Mm.
Because at least like Russia can kind of be like, well, that was one of our nations. We want it back. Right. And you know what's funny? I remember asking people like, I don't get it. What's the big deal? Like, what's
Right,
happening
and
there?
people, that's the thing,
People were
it's
like,
sad that
it's
people don't
weird,
even know that, that
but
it
they
was part of the
still,
USSR, you know what I'm saying? So,
but
okay,
whose side did they take?
say that again.
Whose side did they take in that?
Who, Russia?
Whose
Who are you
side?
talking?
Whose side was taken? Like, who was everybody just like supporting? We got your back.
Oh,
We got this.
Ukraine.
And if you ask them, but like, what is it? And not out of like pure jerkiness or you shouldn't support them. Like,
They know
but what is it?
nothing.
Nothing. So to me, it was like, so y'all really just don't. And I remember me and a couple of my cousins are
Is it
having,
too much to say like we fangirl as Americans? Like we fangirl and we want to cause celeb. You know what I'm saying? We want, oh, okay, this what we doing this week. Think about
right.
the pseudo movements about, during Black Lives Matter 3 years ago, when it was like, okay, everybody make your social media profile all black or
Yep.
something like that. And people were all dumb, like, do they understand what, and then what? And then what? Right? We just go
What's
back. So what
to
happened with
life?
that? Do you understand what you're doing, what you're supporting, what or not supporting?
Exactly.
And same with all of these companies that came out, and we support LGBTQ issues plus issues, and all that's all fine and good, but stick with that, keep that same energy, you know what
Keep
I'm
that
saying?
same energy. Right. And to me, I think for me, it was like, this isn't complicated for you to understand. But this one is because you've been told for so long that it's complicated.
Mm-hmm.
And it really isn't. And I remember, I don't know if it was with you or another friend that it was one of those like, yo, I just realized what's happening there. Like, what's really the root of it? And I'm like,
What's
we're
the
so
root?
big on root cause analysis,
Mm-hmm.
root cause problem. Let's
Yep.
get down to the roots where it's like, so no one took a step back and was like, what's the cause of this? Don't tell me the cause was 3,000 years ago. If
Mm-hmm.
that's the case, I'm gonna need you to go get a DNA test and ask for your birthright to return. Like, it, to me, it blows my mind. Like,
Yeah.
how you can say, and I remember there was like a meme card, and I don't like referencing social media in this sense, but there was a meme card that really made me like laugh because it was just like, if that's the case, I'm gonna need all the Italians to go to England and get their, rights back. I'm gonna need this group to go back to here because you're talking about like,
When you say
oh, this.
Italians, I'm like, or go back to Africa and get you
Yeah, but that's the
understand?
thing. Like, you in this same thought process, right? and I say African Americans just to say the descendants, and please correct me if I'm saying it wrong, the
Mhm.
descendants of slaves, like the
Mhm.
ones that the African Americans, right, as we
Right.
like to categorize it.
Right.
Um,
You know, in
they
America, we love a
you
good category.
oh, we
You will.
love them, but we
You're
love a little
here.
box.
You're here. You're here.
So in that same sense, if an African American did a DNA test, they will have a list of countries that they belong to. And you're talking about like 100, 200 years ago, right? And this is why
Mhm.
I say, like, we as like Palestinians now make the big joke of like, yo, run me a DNA test, because a lot in Israel, right, when they're not allowed to do a DNA test, it is
What?
illegal. Oh
What?
yeah. Yes.
See, and that's that
And
systematic. I'm gonna make
but
sure that
why
nobody knows what really. Let me whitewash
but like
everything.
why would you not allow a DNA test? Because it will show you that you, and there's been, a lot of
Mm.
people who grew up with the understanding that like Palestinian lands belong to them as a birthright. They're like, yo, wait a minute, my DNA says I belong in here. And I'm not telling people one of those go back to where no.
Right, right.
But please understand that you actually don't know your history in that sense. Like, you are taking on somebody else's history as your own. You telling a group of people they don't have a right to return. So
Mhm.
again, so to backtrack again, like, I only enter because of my United States pass, my American passport. My
Mhm.
family members that aren't Americans, they don't enter. They can't enter. And that was the problem right now, where people are
Like
like,
at
oh,
all, or they have to go through so much.
it will take a miracle for somebody that is Palestinian by ethnicity, but doesn't have a, let's say, European Union passport, Canadian passport, American, another
Uh-huh.
passport to enter. They would have to be on like some celebrity level status and
And this
like
is to get
all
into
this just
Israel.
to go in and visit. And even, yeah, just even to visit. So like, even for me, I get to visit everywhere because my parents don't have a Palestinian ID, right? So my dad
Mhm.
actually made us refugee cards. So me, born in the US of A, I carry a refugee card because
Mm.
my father goes, just by the miracle that you will ever be allowed to go back and acknowledge that you are a Palestinian citizen, at least to
Oh,
show that you at one point were from there. So my father didn't have
wow.
it. So because of that, but there's also a plot to it, right? So like, because of that, I'm able to enter. In my American passport, I can go everywhere. My friends whose families have, oh, my backtrack. My sister-in-law. My sister-in-law was born in the West Bank. Her family has the Palestinian ID. She's
Mhm.
only allowed in the West Bank. She's not allowed to visit Jerusalem. She's not allowed to visit Tel Aviv. She's not allowed to. She's only allowed in this box of the West Bank.
How, Sway? Like this is.
And you have to check out the checkpoints. So like, even I go through checkpoints. There is like a little privilege of like, I'm an American, so they put me in a different line,
Mhm.
but it's still a
Mhm.
checkpoint. It is still like consistent harassment, with the
What
new
kind of
rules.
questions do they ask you at the checkpoint?
Complete nonsense, just to upset you. Oh, what's your family name? Where are you guys from? Oh, you think you're from here? Oh, I've gotten that before. Oh, you think you're
And do
from
they
here?
have that condescending tone?
Of course they do. I had one time ask me like, so I think I went when I was like 27. And he's like, is this your only last name? And I was like, yeah. He goes, 27, you're not married? I looked at him, I was like, sir, leave me alone. I get
Look,
this enough from my
look,
family.
how much of that New York girl wanted to come out there and and say something?
Oh my gosh. And then, like, now they will also take your cell phones, right? They'll go through
Mm.
your apps. Who do you follow? Which posts have you liked? Um,
Wow.
they'll even ask like, which mosque do you go to in the country? Like if you're from the US or the UK.
So let's just
Um,
say they see something on your apps or see something that you like that they don't approve of.
denied entry. Well, it's currently happening right now, right? So like, if you're liking a post that's like pro-Palestinian,
Mhm.
you're getting jail time, even for Israeli citizens.
What?
Yeah. This is the land of democracy over there. That's why
I'm
to us
so
it's a
glad
joke.
you're on this show because, like I
To us
said,
it's a joke. It's not a democracy. Like, it
yeah.
is. And then when we're talking about like, so democracy means something very specific, right? And we're talking about language. Um, but democracy is somewhere where you should have freedom of speech, right? Freedom of religion.
Yeah.
You're talking about you can only, this country is only for people of a certain religion. But all three religions are based here. Like
Right.
Christians have more of a birthright to that
Right.
land. Jesus is from there. Jesus, I'm gonna need you to you
I
reverse it.
love how you say that. No,
Like,
Jesus, you know Jesus was from there.
you know why? Because it's like it's still, I told you, like it blows my mind when people are like, what do you mean there's air? And I'm looking at them like, so even in the
About
bombings in
Arab
Gaza,
Christians.
yeah, even in the
Hmm.
bombings of Gaza, these are like the first Christians in the world
Mm,
that their families were killed off. Are those churches? The first churches in the world were bombed. And I'm looking like, community, why do you not care about this? We were in an
yeah.
uproar when, I think, what was it, the church in Spain or France that burnt a
It
couple
was
of years
France, I
ago?
think.
People, donations all
Yeah.
over the news, like
Again, a
TV show
cause celeb.
interruptions.
Look,
And
change your social
region,
media avatar to the flag, their
right?
flag
Everybody
color.
had it in the back of their Facebook, and I'm
Hmm.
looking at it like, these are the original churches. Like, you can even, I could be wrong in this, and I will always, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. Gee, Jesus himself could have been there.
Mm.
We don't care about that. But then one of my friends was telling me, like, she said, I think Arabs have such a grasp on history. Like, they love holding on to history and roots. And I've had this conversation with like a couple of my friends where, like, we're upset about the burning of the olive trees. Like, we have such an upset about the land, like the actual soil
Mhm.
there.
Mhm.
Um, but I think for us, because we can't touch it, like I can't freely go there and like
Mm.
roam the land, like, the schools that my grandpa built, my great grandfather
Yeah.
built. I can't touch the stones of the houses, right? But we have such, like, we need it to be palpable. We want to touch it. So I think we hold on to those images and these thoughts and like the history of it, that I'm just like, you don't pay attention to the history of that, like,
Mm.
and it comes up a lot in conversation when my friends are like, man, I know my grandma and that's about it. And I'm like, what about your great grandma? Mhm. And
Shoot,
I'm
people
just
don't
like,
need no last names anymore here, so
so it's just like,
unfortunate, but
I think for us, maybe because it was taken away from us, right? So there's
yeah.
this like there was a video that came out. There was like this older woman that was just like singing in Arabic, and she's saying like, hold each other. You guys are going back because you were never allowed to say goodbye to the land, right? And it became
Mm.
like, it's a very, it's
Right,
an
in
old
an
woman.
Americanized way, I'm thinking you
It's
saying
just,
goodbye to the land, like what,
yeah, but I
but I
think
hear you.
because everybody came here by choice, while for us it wasn't by choice.
Mm.
Again, would we have come here? Maybe. You never know, but we were forced out. So we will never know what it means to kind of like go for the American dream as the American dream rather than just like it's forced onto us.
And you know what? I take that back because, being descendants of slaves, it's the same story. And so when people say they want to go back to the motherland that you've never seen, you've never experienced, like I get that now. I heard you listening to you say that, I'm like, wanting to be a part of a place that you were pulled from and you never got a chance to experience it. See, we all got the same story. That's why it's so ridiculous that we can't, and
But
blacks, we can't get along. We can't understand each other. We can't
it's
fellowship with each other. They make it so difficult.
it's insanity to me that people can't look at somebody's story and be like, this is your truth. Because I've been told, I remember, I went to New York City public schools, and I've had teachers, I remember we had Flag Day, like, I don't think they do it in school so much anymore, but like I remember we had like one of our, like, during our spirit weeks, it was like
Hmm.
Flag Day, and everybody showed up with their flag, and I got kicked out of my classroom.
What?
I came in, I had a little Palestinian flag on my leg, like little pinned. I was so like proud of it. And I remember a teacher looked at me and she was like, what is that? And I was like, here we go.
We
And I
gotta
remember being
find
like,
this teacher. Are they still alive?
I don't know.
We gotta
I
find
don't
this
know. And
teacher.
I remember they were like, get out, you can't wear that. And there was another teacher in that room. This was a business computer class. There was another teacher in that room that was just like, you can't kick her out for that. And I remember she just like, I don't want her here with that on.
Mm.
And I'm looking at her like, you're taking my flag as an offense. You're taking an ethnic group's flag
And was
offensively. How
hateful.
brainwashed are you, though?
Yep.
Like, this isn't a hate symbol. This isn't like anything cursing you. This is somebody's ethnic, like, this is a flag. Whether you believe that flag ever existed or not is on you. But this is my flag as a human. Like, this is
Yeah.
cool. Like, what? And I remember, like,
How
at
sad is
16 in my
that?
head, hard headed as hell. Oh, I had my leg up, like, say something, please. Just like,
You would.
16.
See, they got the right one, right? They got the right one.
Oh, I've had that. I had a teacher. I remember one time, when you do the little introductions, it's like, oh, talk about yourself, where you're from, blah, blah, blah. And I remember being like, oh, I'm Palestinian. And I remember, like, even my parents, they were always very cautious of us saying that, especially after 9/11, right? So they would just be like, just say you're from Jerusalem. They'll know where you're from.
Mm.
And, in front of our parents, yeah, yeah, Jerusalem. At school, Palestine,
Hmm.
Palestine, Palestine.
So
So
let me
we would,
share this with
yeah,
you. In college, there was one Palestinian girl. Wasn't friends with her, but she actually, didn't like one of my friends. But when they were about to fight in college, and she went off and she was like PLO blam blam, and I remember her saying that. I cannot think of her name right now, but oh my gosh, it to me it was just the way she said it was comical, but I was like, she's serious. Like she about to go off.
and it's funny because I think at this point we're very much like, we keep hearing what words are being said to us, right? So,
Hmm.
like, you're a terrorist. Where,
Yeah.
as an adult, I'm just like, shut up. But the New Yorker in me wants to be like, boom, bitch. Like, oh, sorry. I
Yeah,
don't know if you
yeah.
can curse, but
No, it's fine. It's okay.
like
Right.
the,
No, because
the New Yorker in me just wants to be like, boom.
yeah,
Like, just to
scare
be
you.
like, do you know
Yeah.
how stupid you sound right
Right.
now? And then it's the labeling, right?
Right.
The words
That's
that
what
you
I'm saying.
can and can't
The
use.
weaponization of words. So in my research, I've always seen kafiyas. Am I pronouncing that right? Kafia?
Kofi, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Kofia. And first of all, I just think they slick, right? It looks, like it's slick. It's, fashion savvy. Again, I'm showing my ignorance, but I didn't know what it meant. Um,
Yeah.
but I told you I watched The View, and one of the parents of one of the three Vermont students that was shot. She's made this quote about the kafia. Let me see if I can find it. She said, so first of all, so the kafia is the black check kind of scarf, so people can get a frame of reference for it. That originated in Iraq. I kind of did that little research too, but it's a traditional headdress worn in the Middle East and North African regions. So this mom said, speaking of her kids and if this man who shot them, in general, she said if they weren't speaking Arabic, if they weren't wearing their kafia, she said, which has been associated with Palestine because it's part of their traditional garb, but somehow it's become associated with terrorism only. And when that's repeated and repeated and repeated in movies and in press, um, and worst of all, from government leadership, then people who are already clearly filled with hate have access to gun and who have access to guns are going to find it incredibly easy to target them. And they
Hmm.
were targeted, and like I said, I had to figure that part out, but you see a lot more in solidarity, Palestinian Americans, from the students to, they wear them, and why not? But when people see them and they don't understand that that's their traditional garb, and want to put labels on it, then madness erupts, right? But you mad, you know what I'm saying? Why are you mad?
So with that, right, like, it's, you said the style thing, right? So when I was in
Hmm.
high school, so this was 2007, to 2006.
Youngin.
Those those scarves were the style, and they came
Mhm.
in various colors.
Black people wore 'em, like
It was also my first understanding, though, because at this time we were in the United States, we were in Iraq, and it became my
mhm,
understanding that like we go to a country, we do what we do, we take away from it. So this was one of the cultural things that we took away from it. I remember it was like in various colors, right? And it was in music videos. You know, you walk down a New York City street, the stands would be selling them,
right.
the vendors. But even with that, the black and white is the most popular in relation to Palestinians. Every country actually has the different colors. Red and white is for a country, beige and
Mhm.
white is a different country. And like we know that culturally.
Right, right.
But it is that. It's the weaponization. It's taking my culture. Like this scarf has been worn for centuries, let's say. Why is it now a problem for you?
Mhm.
Like, why are you trying to make it bad? Right? Like, I don't, you know, you, so, but then if you want to talk about the plights of people of color within the United States, right? Think of like the negative image that they place on do rags
Mhm.
and how now it's acceptable to wear them out. But it used to be you go home, you put them on with your braids to keep them, you don't wear them out in public. And if you wore them out in
You can
public,
see
you were
me when
looked
I go
at
to bed.
you were looked at a little sideways if you wore
Yeah.
it out in public. You were looked at as like, oh, you're not professional, you're not,
Mhm.
you know, it goes into all of that, right? So
Right.
the weaponizing of people's culture, the weaponizing of people's languages, the words that we use, right? So like um you know, Arabic language is one of the first languages, right? So like you're now telling people they can't speak that in public or it's going to be a danger to them, or you're grouping a whole, and then you're also looking at like, you know, there's some Arab nations that are like, we want nothing to do with it, like this is not our problem, like please keep us out.
Right.
But for me it is very much like you're you want to put such a negative light on people that you don't interact with, and you've done it so well for so long that people don't even question it anymore.
Mhm. At
Like you
all.
were told this group is bad. Okay, cool. Yeah, we know they are. We've heard all the stories about them. Tell me one you heard.
Right.
You can't get one out.
You can't even get one
You
out.
can't, right? But for us, it's very much like, okay, so what are some things that have happened? Tantora massacre, Deir Yassin massacre. There have been documentaries made. There have been series made. So it's just like when you tell me when somebody says to me like oh, but don't justify. There's no but in this situation. Please
Mhm.
do not justify killings. All of a sudden, Amnesty report we don't listen to anymore. They're biased. The United Nations is biased. Human
Mm.
Rights Watch is biased. But we used them to go into Iraq. That was okay. We used them to go into Afghanistan. All of that was completely fine, right?
Yeah.
Even now with the Russian, like to go back to Russia, to even bring it from like a different, we agreed with their reports on it. So why is it when they say that this is happening there right now, everybody's like, wait a minute, I think they're biased and I think they're right. Really? All of a
Yeah.
sudden, when it comes to certain groups of people, we don't believe these reports that come out, but for everybody else, we've already always believed them. But I just,
So
it's sad, you know. Like I,
it's like I said at the top of the show, like we aren't going to solve this tonight, but I do think,
mm-mm.
I'm hoping that people will start to do their own research and understand what we are discussing. But I appreciate you introducing me to, is it Nora Erakat?
Yeah, love her.
So for everybody out there, she is a human rights attorney. She's a um, activist. She's a professor at Rutgers. Remember, I told you about that quote about oppression or the oppressed?
Hmm.
That was her.
Oh,
I didn't make the connection.
yeah.
So I was looking at her on the what is it, Read Live, Joy Reid show, and she said, Joy was asking her about the occupation of the Palestinians and what all of that meant. And she said, you cannot beat an occupation out of existence. You
Mm-mm.
actually have to end the occupation.
Mhm.
So to Israel, like, hello, you have to end this, because and then what it's going to do is continue to stoke. And you know people say, say Hamas is a terrorist organization and they've done horrible things. I don't dispute that, but what I'm learning is that when you are bullied, I always think of this as an analogy. You know, if
Mm-hmm.
you are bullied and consistently not heard and not seen, that stokes a fire in you.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, to not give Palestine state rights. And I know they've had an opportunity over the years and talks have gone and didn't work out or whatever. Um, that stokes a level of hatred in people.
Mm-hmm.
And to keep pushing people down, um, and not kind of getting to the root of the issue, which is our house is on fire. You know what I'm saying? We've been screaming.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if we're going to live together in harmony, let's live together in harmony. You can't put all of these rules on us and then not expect us to be mad. So
I mean,
it's so much deeper than that. But her quote of, you can't beat an occupation out of existence. You've got to end the occupation. I was like, boom, like, yes, that makes total sense to me. You hit the nail on the head. And she said there is no military solution. So what I want to do before we move to the rapid fire section, you know, I hope we have dropped some gems in here where people can kind of go down the rabbit hole that I went in and kind of make it make sense for you. But, you know, who are some people that, um if you want to learn more, that you trust to follow on social media? Or, you know, I know Nora Ericat is one of them.
one. I think Norman Finkelstein. He doesn't. I don't know if his social media, like he actually has one. His books. You know, he himself is a Holocaust survivor,
Mm-hmm.
and he is very much just like this cannot happen.
Yeah.
You know, taking land away from, like, this doesn't work out. There are some, and it's funny because I think, like, as much as, you know, I'm a younging for you, right? But
Yes,
to
you are.
me, I am seeing these like younger generations. There is Jinan Matari, I think her name is. There is this guy Sbeih, Sbeih dot something, right? On here. Let me get his. I'm gonna make sure I'm saying it right, because he actually, so it's SBEIH.jpg that
Mm-hmm.
talks about this. There are websites to, if you know, wanted to. It's called Stand with Palestine, because like that's how we pronounce Palestine.
Okay. Okay.
That goes through like nonfiction books, fiction, poetry. I'm looking at like news and opinions, additional reading, films and videos, podcasts, and it kind of just like gives you like outlines of just like what is happening there.
Yeah.
Um, and it has like events in different states. Like if you go to the bottom, it's like events, and it'll tell you like based on which city you're in. Baltimore
Mm-hmm.
has one apparently on the 2nd of December. Oregon, Massachusetts, Florida. You know, like it just tell Wisconsin. Just events for like either a march, movie night, a get to know event.
Talk
There
about that
are.
a little bit more. The movie nights. What, you know, are these documentaries, and what is the goal of these movie nights?
So the movie nights are, the goal is to, number one, sense of community, right? Because I feel like, even for me personally, when all of this happened, I felt like there was like an error, like something was being pointed at me, like you're bad, everybody hates who you are, you've always been hated, your ethnicity is wrong, your religion, all of it, right? And we do these to kind of just like sit together and be like, wait a minute, not everybody hates me, certain groups on social media might. Right.
Right. Right. Right.
So the movie nights, it's usually documentaries. I know Tentora gets played a lot. There is a movie out right now called Israelism.
Mm-hmm.
That's uh, it's made by American Jewish kids that have, you know, went on birthright, served over there, and then came back and were like, wait a minute,
Mm.
we've been taught something that isn't really the situation, the reality of it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just to create a sense of community, just through, you know, like watching a movie and just talking about it, starting a conversation.
Yeah.
They're not, you know, there's a bunch on Netflix too. Like if you go on Netflix and you put in Palestine, you'll see a bunch of movies come up for
Mm-hmm.
those that have a Netflix subscription. But the movie nights are, you know, these special events that, you know, to bring the community together, kind of have us be able to talk a little bit in a safe space, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, of our feelings and have it represented through images, because I think we've gotten so used to movies about us show vilifying us that it's kind of just like, you know what, we are victims.
Yeah.
There are people out there that have seen that and made movies about this, so it just allows us to kind of see ourselves in a different light than what we're not used to.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much
Absolutely.
for that surface dive, but I hope people go deeper, and I hope they hear you, and just it's a sense of understanding that I think we all need to have, and it's not about hating anyone. And I think if
Absolutely not.
the again, it's cliche about spreading love, not hate, but it's not, right? It's
Mm-mm.
about that. People don't have time. Everybody's living their life. You know what I'm saying? Why are we worrying about this? You know what I'm saying? Like, why are you concerning yourself with the way I look or where I'm from? And and that can go across cultures. And it's very frustrating for me, but as being African American, I'm just like, we all of these things kind of happen to all of us. So why are we still stuck on color? Why are we still one is better, superior than the other? Why do we have that mentality?
That superiority thing is what's gotta go. Like, you cannot say you have more of a right to anything
Yeah,
based off of something else. Like, I
right.
don't have a right to live in Virginia more than anybody else, or live in New York more than anybody else, or live in like, it's not how the world works. So that
Yep.
part,
All right. So
megaphone. Oh,
the fun
okay.
stuff, the fun stuff. Let's let these
Okay.
people get to know you just a little bit better. All right, rapid fire segment. It never goes fast because if I make a connection, I want to stop and talk about it, but we're going to try to get through.
Okay.
First question, what's your favorite holiday?
Ooh. Um. Oh God, I used to call it the Hunger Games, but Ramadan has actually become. Yeah, and
Okay, the Hunger
well, that's
Games.
that's my that's my Muslim side, Arab side. That's my
Mhm.
Muslim side. Let me be very specific. I do like Fourth of July, even though it kind of contradicts my whole, identity in the revolution, but like, only because we always got together. We always had a barbecue. Everybody had
Yeah,
off work, so it's, to me, just anything that connects us
brings people together.
together. It was always a fun time at auntie's house, just kids running around. Somebody always got injured. It wouldn't be it
Yes,
wouldn't be a family
absolutely.
event without that. But yeah, so Ramadan has become one of my favorites.
Okay, what's
And
the last song you downloaded?
downloaded, oh gosh. What did I download? Can I check? Is that allowed, or it has to be
Check,
off the top of my head?
check it,
Okay.
check it.
Ugh. Oh, I think I told I got called a red flag because I still use Apple Music. Let's see, my library. I don't even know how to use this, honestly. Okay, am I gonna be basic if I say it was the Drake album? Apparently,
Really? Are you
the
a
new one.
Drake fan?
Oh my
Okay,
gosh,
that's not.
I
I
used
mean,
to. I used to say it was. He's a complete red flag in total, but like, I love me some Drake.
All right, next question. Who was your first celebrity crush?
Oh God. Um. Maybe Eminem, even though I know as I got older, I should not have been listening to him in probably fifth grade. But that's because I had
Wow.
older brothers. But I'm trying to think. I feel like anytime I think of that, I like think of like what posters were up.
Mhm.
So my brothers had up like Biggie and Tupac because I'm the baby.
Mhm.
So my brothers are from like 45. I'm lying. Yeah. Right? No, 41. Oh, they'll kill me. 41. So Tupac, Biggie, but I think Eminem. It was like I was in fifth grade. I knew the whole Slim Shady album, even though as I got
Mm.
older again. Where was my mom when I
Mhm.
was listening? And why do I still know every word of those songs?
Yes. Is Lose Yourself on that album, or was that the
No,
first
that
one?
was after. Lose Yourself
Yeah.
was when 8 Mile came out.
Yes, then you know this. Crazy. Okay. What's your favorite thing to cook?
Oh, lentil soup.
Really?
I know. It's
And
like, you know how people go
really?
crazy about pumpkin spice season? I am
Mhm.
very much like lentil soup season. Let's go. Like
I
it's
love
cold
it.
outside. Run me my lentil soup. But it's there's a I think I was talking about this to somebody the other day. It was like the thicker, the Arab style one is like a very chunky where you can kind of like dip it with bread.
Mhm.
We're a very carbo rich culture. So um lentil soup is probably my favorite dish to make. There is okra, which my cousins are gonna drag me for when I
No
send them this.
way.
They're gonna be like, "You're nasty. I cannot believe you said that in public."
Oh my gosh. Not
Yeah, there's
okra,
like
the
an
slime
okra.
slime.
So okra, we make it as a soup. Yeah.
Why? What else is in it?
So I was
That's the
thinking,
main
I
thing?
think there's a conversation from like 2 days ago with somebody being like, "It's slimy.
It's
How
slimy.
disgusting can you be?" And I'm just like, "Mind your business. I like what I
I
like."
love seafood gumbo, but I won't do it with okra. Like I'm good.
Mm-mm.
I can make it good and delicious without the okra. I'm good with that. All right. So I always ask my guests to share with me their favorite television theme or TV show theme song.
Mm-hmm.
And if I know it, then we have to sing the first verse. Okay.
Okay.
So what is your favorite TV show theme song?
The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
So easy, man. This is not.
I know. I'm
I was
so
like, I'm
basic.
looking. I'm thinking Golden Girls. Well, okay, so we got to do it,
Okay.
and we two brown girls, so we got to do it on beat. Don't you make me pull your card.
It's
You
been a
hear me?
while. Please don't.
Don't.
I hold on to that card and I show up to the bar. I show up.
All right, let's get it started. In
In
West
West Philadelphia,
Philadelphia,
born and
born and
raised on the
raised.
playground.
Stop going so fast. Come
Sorry,
on.
sorry.
Let's one more time.
Okay.
In
In
West
West Philadelphia,
Philadelphia, born and
and
raised on the
raised on the
playground
playground is
is
where I
where I
used
spent
most
most
of
of
my
my
days.
days chilling out,
Now
maxing,
maxing,
relaxing out,
relaxing, all
cool,
cool, and on playing
shooting
some
some b-ball
b-ball
outside.
outside of school and a couple of
Couple of
friends was up to no
guys
good.
that was up to no good. Started making trouble in my neighborhood.
I got in
Got
one
him.
little fight. My
My
mom got
mom got
scared.
scared. Said you're moving with your auntie and uncle
And
in Bel
Uncle
Air.
Ballet.
All right, let's stop it there. I'm sort of pulling your card. We gotta test something else out. We'll go to something else. All right.
No.
My last segment is called Your Lashes Have Expired. And that came about on my first time doing stand-up. I did a show about lashes and just being
Oh
obnoxious
gosh.
with these fake lashes and the fact that I know that they can't see not a thing through those lashes, right? But it came out as a joke, but it's really serious. What is something that you want to see go away and never come back?
Oh god, I thought you wanted to ask me about my lash story. I have one.
Oh, you better not. You better not with no fake lashes.
What
Those-
is something that I want to like a trend?
it can be a trend. It could be. I mean, some people have been as light as no men wearing white Air Force Ones and it's slouchy, tight jeans.
Mm.
And then some people say racism, or
Oh,
people who hate for no reason, or
right.
it can go run the gamut.
This is where my head is like, oh, but those are a given, and I've started to realize those are not a given for a lot of people.
Hmm.
Um, well, racism, all the isms, I guess, that impact people negatively.
Right.
If we wanted to be on a little lighter note, I guess I would say the one thing I would want, I think I am over the lashes too. Even though I wear, let me rephrase. I like them at like a little bit of a natural length. The ones that are like, I can't see your eyes.
Yep.
Yeah, the butterfly, those I would love to see go away. Um,
Agreed.
I was gonna
So
say like
racism, yes. All the
all the
isms,
isms that
all the
impact
isms.
people negatively.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
Okay.
I would love to see that just disappear.
And in
I don't
in
know.
reference to our conversation tonight, is there
Mhm.
something that you'd like to see go away?
I think it is something that I would like to see away in reference to our conversation is please. don't look away from a situation because the people have a little bit more melanin than you in it.
Mm,
Right. So even like, I want to call out even within my own community, right? Like speak about what's happening in Sudan, speak about what's happening in the Congo, right? We
mhm.
are open up your mind to the laws and what the laws are putting in place, right? So I think that's another conversation of just like, why are we so unaware of even the smallest of
How
laws? Like,
local
yeah,
government works.
how I think to me, I wish the idea of just focusing on your own circle and people who look like you or sound like you,
Mhm,
um, taking a different conversation, taking a different perspective, um, look at all the hues, of the world and kind of just be
mhm.
like, understand that they each have their own history.
Yep,
They each have their own trauma, right? And I think, a lot of stuff that happens is trauma based, is a
yep.
trauma response. I think I would like that to kind of become a norm where people are like, it takes a lot for even for you to be like, yo, I didn't know that this was happening.
Mhm,
And I think for me, it was very much like, my gosh, are there other people like that out there? Like,
mhm.
because to me, it's very easy for me to, it is a lazy response for me to also just say, like, my otherness is what makes them hate me. That's a
Mhm.
lazy response. It's a, while it could be true,
Yeah.
it's also like I'm not trying to figure out like I'm not engaging. And I say that a lot. Like a lot of communities don't engage in what do you see wrong in this situation with me? Like how am I the problem in this?
Mhm.
Um so I think that understanding of just like, oh, you know what? I didn't realize a lot of people didn't. So now I think when I start conversations, it's like, this was only a problem from 1948, right? Like before that, the British and then the Ottoman and like, and it
Yeah.
becomes a different conversation than just like, how do you not know that?
Right. Right.
I
Well,
think that's a lot of kind of my whole take on the world from now on. Just
mhm.
understand, learn, research,
Yeah.
um, look into laws, question why is this law being made and
Right.
why are we behind it so strongly?
Mhm.
Why are we so agreeing? Why are we agree? Why is everybody agreeing to this? Like, question when people agree to
Blindly,
everything.
like they don't, and even in organizations that I belong to, I'm like, it's like sheep, you know.
The
There's
sheep
one or two
mentality.
that will question, and that's what you need to do. But other than that, they'll vote yes, yes, yeah. I'm like, did you understand what you just wanted? So it's across the board. But Iman, thank you so much
Of
for taking the
course.
time to talk to me on my show and to kick off season 4 with heavy topic, but a real topic. And I want people to hear you. I want people to see you. I want people to see and understand, you know, people are people, get to
Mm-hmm.
know people at their core, no matter where they're from, but specifically in this conflict of, this battle that, we've been, you know, I feel like the media has pushed that it's such a religious thing. And, it is hate for sure,
Mm-hmm.
but are we sure what the hate is about and what the clear, what does one want that the other has,
Mm-hmm.
So go
Mm-hmm.
down that rabbit hole. I challenge everybody to do your own research and lead with love and ask questions in safe spaces. Some people, like, I don't always feel like being the one black friend that wants to take the questions from my white girlfriends who feel comfortable with me, but I will, because that's exhausting. But sometimes there are people like me that will be like, yeah, ask me, don't take that nowhere else. Because
You know,
you know,
but even with what you just said, I think at this point, I'll be the spokesperson for them. They are very much like, ask me, tell. I
mhm.
want to talk. We're so tired of being silenced
And that's
that
the
it's like,
thing, we
ask
never
me.
hear your side. We don't.
And I will say, we a lot of people don't hear our side because we already assume that you're against
That
us
you've
because you
made
haven't
it.
asked us.
Yep.
You already made up your mind because if you in our, I will be quite honest. For me, it was, if you haven't asked me about it, it's because you don't want to offend me with your beliefs. That's why you
Mm,
haven't asked me, because you think that I'm in the wrong.
right.
So let
And
me
so
just
you've
tiptoe
already
around
got
it.
your guard up too.
Oh, my guard is very much like, okay,
Yeah.
since I am, if I am, my otherness is a problem for you, let's just keep it as is. We'll be
Yeah. Keep it
cordial with each
consistent.
other.
How you doing? Hi and bye. Yeah, I get
Mm-hmm.
it.
Mm-hmm.
But
And a
see,
lot of us feel that way. A lot feel that way, where it's like, I don't understand why my coworkers, my cousins have had this conversation with me where they're like, I don't understand why my coworkers haven't asked.
mm-hmm.
And they're like, they know I'm Palestinian. They haven't even said anything.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just like, I had that in my own head, like, so if I'm not being asked about it, that's because you are against. Like, you don't, and I know in my head,
And
it's like, you don't even
that's not
understand the
always true.
situation.
That's not always
It
true.
isn't.
And it could be, it's that tiptoeing and not being sure and
Hmm.
all of the things. But like you said, you've gotten so much of this and heard and seen so much of how people perceive you or people who look like you, and you've made your own defense mechanism.
Hmm.
And I'm glad that you talked to me about this. I'm glad that you felt like it was nice of me to ask you how you were doing, and that was totally sincere. And if I
Hmm.
hadn't done that, you wouldn't be on the show. You wouldn't
I
I would
wouldn't
not
be.
have probably gone down the rabbit hole to learn and try to understand a little better, and
And
we've
that's
had several conversations since then of
and
me just
that's
checking on you.
and that is, if I could again, like, say one thing, check in on your Palestinian friends, right? We
Mhm.
have that big movement of like, check in on your Black friends, check in on your
Mhm.
Asian friends when the Asian hate, right?
Yep.
Check in on your Palestinian friends. You know what? Check in on your Arab friends. Check in on
Mhm.
your, even I feel like a couple of my friends that are, religiously Christian, so they're so growing up in New York, people aren't religious. So once I
Okay.
moved, when I came to the South, I was just like, y'all really go to church every Sunday? Like,
Mhm.
it was confusion. It was so confusing for me because
Mm.
I grew up with people that went Christmas and Easter. Bam.
But that's funny because Black people in New York go to church, and I'll say this because some of the churches, because y'all can't park, y'all triple park to get it. I'm like, how you triple park? What if the dude that's on the inside need to get out?
Yeah.
I know
So
they go to church.
I think a lot of them are also conflicting because they're like, well, but the Bible says XYZ, and I'm like, go to the back chapters, please. I can
It's
give you some.
confused.
Just go to the back of just go to Revelation, and I think a lot of people are so scared of having the conversation because you've been told, if you don't have this specific view on this topic, you're
Mhm.
you're you're a
Then you're
racist, you're
wrong.
this, you're this.
You're racist. You're
Yeah.
anti-Semite. You are this. You're
And it's
that. And
just
I
like, you
hate that.
can't, that's what's stopping people from learning, because they're like, I don't want to be labeled as this. You know
Yeah.
what? Let's go back to take away the labels.
Mhm.
Take away the
Take away the
labels.
labels, but that's what we do. That's what we do.
Yeah.
But
But it's just like, that's one thing that's like, I check in on your friends. I think for a lot of people, this is impacting them, whether it's a friend, a student, like you said, a couple of people had, like, the students would be side eyeing and kind of
mhm.
quiet. And you can see the tension in them building up. Check in even as slowly as just like, hey, like,
You
are you
good?
okay? You
Mhm.
good? Like, I see
You
you.
good?
You have a right to your feelings, no
Mhm.
matter which side you.
Right.
It's not a debate. It's not a
It's not
fight.
a debate.
Just,
It's not a fight. But the adults in the room don't seem to get that sometimes. I'm like,
hmm
they make it so
hmm
difficult for educators to say like, well, I see this, but you say this. But anyway, I have taken you over your hour, and
no
I'm so
worries.
appreciative, and I know we'll have more talks, and
Absolutely.
I'm always open to learn, and I'm always gonna check on you, and just
Appreciate it.
you good. That's what you're gonna get. You good.
You good?
All right. You have a great
You
evening.
too. You have a great one as well.
Okay.
Bye.
Take care. All right, y'all. That was the end of our very first show to kick off season 4. I hope you found this informative. I hope you watch for next shows that are coming up, and I hope you understand why this particular topic brought me out of my dormancy. This was very important to me. Just like, issues for Black Americans are important to me. And I hope, people carry that same energy to support and understand what we do. Just like Iman said, check on your Palestinian friends, enlighten yourself, pick up a book, Google a topic, and start having some conversations. So have a great evening. Thanks for watching Just Being Honest with Mills Lane. We're back. Take care.